Do I really need to tell you what this car is? I'm guessing I probably don't, but in case you're slow or you're just catching up, yes, this is a Lamborghini Countach. This is a 1985 5000S. I know this is going to be cliche, but I was one of those kids with this car on my wall. I'm not kidding, I'm not making it up, and it wasn't the original version either. That 79 that is so lusted after now as being the purest version without the wing. I didn't have that one. I didn't have the 89, the 25th anniversary, which interestingly was designed by Horatio Pagani. I had this guy. I had the 5000S with this wing and the sharp nose. This was the one I lusted after. And here I am now, how many years later? I'm in it. I'm driving it. This is not lost on me.
Really, if you think about it, there's no other car that really defines supercars like the Countach does. This is the car that really turned me into a car freak. I mean, I had the Hot Wheels, I had Matchbox, I had models of this car, and I had the poster on my wall. I'm meeting my hero, and it's entirely different than what I expected. And we're shooting on a rainy day. Yes, again, we have picked a crazy mechanical supercar, and it's raining outside. But for right now, the roads are a little bit more clear. When people started really buying supercars and they really became part of the public consciousness, it was normal for owners to accept so many idiosyncrasies about the car just to own it. You just can't help wondering the team that built it, what they were thinking.
The designer of this car, Marcello Gandini, he was a pretty young guy. He was early on in his design career, and he designed two other vehicles at the same time, the Mura and the Lancia Stratos. Now, have you ever seen three car designs that look more like what a kid sketches on a textbook than those three cars?
Styling on this car is pretty much what set the standard for any future generation supercar. It's such a cartoon car. It still sets the standard. You know, we're here in some pretty beautiful scenery, but what's so funny is when I see couples drive past, I see the girl looking at the scenery and I see the guy looking at this car. Their heads are pointed both ways. It's because of the styling of this car. It's unbelievable, and it's still 20, 30 years later, this car turns heads like you wouldn't believe. I wish I had a palette knife to scrape eyeballs off the side of this car, but you know what? There isn't a straight line on there. If you notice, every surface has some nice crown. There's a lot of nice, beautiful arc and line kind of styling to this. Yes, it set the automotive world on fire when it came out, but it got refined throughout the generations, and I still think it's one of the best looking.
It's absurd in the greatest way possible. It clearly looks like it was designed from the dreams of a child. This wing, you've heard by now, this doesn't help you for aerodynamics, but it also adds to the wonder and the ridiculousness of this car. Spending the day with a Lamborghini Countach, I've been trying to figure out, what is this car? It's a lighthouse. You drive this thing, you stop for a moment, you put up the absurd door, and people cannot help themselves. They're drawn to the light. It's amazing. Look at this thing, 30 years later, 1985, when this car was made. Think of another car, 10 years old, let alone 30 years old, that will stop people in their tracks. It doesn't matter if you know cars or not. Most people have said today, is that a Ferrari? No, it's not. This is a Lamborghini Countach, and nothing else looks like this. Look at this wing. Look at those doors. You put it on any other car, it's absurd. You put it here, it's amazing. Yes, you've seen Lambo doors now on Civics and Mustangs, but this is the genesis of that concept, and I actually think, including later Lambos, no car has ever looked as good with these doors as this original Countach.
When you open the scissor doors, I thought they were going to have a lot of play and sort of wiggle around a lot. They're solid. I thought I was going to get in this car and everything would feel really flimsy, especially the instrument panel here.
Look at this gauge cluster. It's just a rectangle bolted onto the dash. It has such an 80s old school feel about it that isn't actually all that nice or really very ergonomic.
And nobody cares. It's part of the charm, and strangely, the interior feels really solid. It feels so far better built than I expected.
air conditioning doesn't work, the speedometer doesn't work. I mean, there are those quirks, of course. However, this is a 30-year-old car with 70,000 miles. This is not a garage queen. It's actually holding up pretty well, all things considered. These seats are just a crescent moon of padding. They have none of the normal lumbar or advanced construction of modern race seats, and yet it does feel like you could sit in these seats comfortable for a long time. It's just you're going to have to be short.
I mean, here I am, shoehorned into this car. Both Todd and I are 6'3", but surprisingly, I'm comfortable. My head is not touching the roof. I know Todd's will be.
I have no choice but to sit here just kind of a little bit hunched. And yes, in that classic Italian style, your feet are way to the right. You're tucked around the front wheel. You can almost feel the treads going by with your left ankle.
Listen to that. Yes, you're not going to be doing quick shifts in this car, but once you start to figure out how it works and the mechanicals, and it needs you, it does not drive itself. And that's what I'm loving about the Countach.
This is an old, long throws, somewhat imprecise gearbox. 5 speeds. All of the gears are very long. Normally on a review, we're going to be in 3rd or 4th. In this car, we're going to be in 2nd.
All right, here we go. We're going to upshift to 3rd. This is a major event when you're driving a Countach.
This 5000S is a almost 5-liter V12. They originally wanted a 5-liter in the Countach, but they had trouble making it all work, so it started with a variation of the 4-liter out of the Miura. They got to this version, which is kind of the 3rd variation of this car, and it put in about a 4.7-liter V12, so they got close to that 5-liter that they always wanted. But this is a naturally aspirated V12. All that power is way at the top end. It's there. This is not a slow car. But there's no instant throttle response. It has that long pedal travel and that naturally aspirated engine. It just needs a minute. It needs to work its way up to what it really has available.
I'm finding it fascinating driving it. It's not a car that you want to really hustle through these corners like Todd and I are used to doing on a lot of different cars. It can. It certainly can. But man, does it take work. There's no power steering. And yes, it lightens up like every car with unassisted steering and a mid-engine configuration. It definitely lightens up, but it still feels very heavy. And I can't say that I feel connected to the road. I'm wrestling this car to the ground.
This is not a huge car. It's a wide car, but it's not a very big car. The wheelbase is pretty short. And this extra wide stance on those absurdly wide tires actually make you feel very grounded.
It's like driving one of those old wooden roller coasters. There's so much noise, and you're just not sure what kind of ride you're gonna get, but man, is it fun. It's not a car that you come in hot into a corner, throw in the second, and power through. It's almost like a GT car.
Now, I don't really want to make this car dance. I've seen the videos of the people that do it, and I am now ever more in awe. But I've got my legs tucked up on either side of the steering wheel. I've got to shuffle my hands around to stay out of the way of my knees. It's a lot of fun, but I don't want to drive it at 10/10ths. I feel like I want to drive it 7 or 8. I want to just enjoy it. I don't want to try to hoon it because I'm just flat out too big for this car. It doesn't feel like it's going to bite you, but it doesn't have a kind of inviting, push a little harder demeanor either.
You don't just simply get in, twist the key, and you're gone, or turning around, making U-turns in this car. That's nearly impossible. That's a big ask. All the little things that you and I take for granted driving modern cars is suddenly a chore in the Countach. Nothing about driving this car is quick motions like you would in a modern car. So much fun.
Just easing into that long pedal travel, working your way around a long corner, and I can't help but smile. There's a lot of things about this that are not what you hope for, and I kind of don't care.
I'm just marveling at the experience, the difference between looking at this car and actually driving it. And this owner, he has told us that it's a lot more fun to be looking at it than it is to be driving it. And sitting here now, I have to agree with him.
I see that point. There's a lot of wisdom in that, but I also think it misses the fact that there is an adventure here. There is a one-of-a-kind experience that the Countach does provide. It has every mid-engined Italian exotic quirk you've heard about. It's pretty much all boiled down and distilled into this car. Your feet are way to the right. The gearbox is a little clunky. The handling isn't amazing. The engine is loud. It's finicky, and I don't care. I'm perfectly happy to drive. Look at me sitting here. I'm like Sasquatch or the Humpback of Notre Dame trying to sit in this car. I am far too big for this automobile. But the little boy in me, the 10-year-old, the 15-year-old, with the Lamborghini Countach still on my wall as other cars had come and gone. I'm having a day here.
I wasn't sure if I was really going to like the Countach. I loved looking at it, but I wasn't sure if I was going to like driving it. And here I am, floored, and I really do like it.
The Countach is kind of like that person you were first attracted to, that model or actress that may have been 2 or 3 times older than you, but you first thought, wow, they're so beautiful. Once you were an adult and you had a chance to be with them, wouldn't you?
Todd and I always look for the driving experience and the visceral fun of driving these cars. And that is why, if you ever have the chance, not just to own one, but at the very least, to drive this car, it's going to change your opinion entirely. It's sexy to look at and just an entirely different driving experience than you would ever expect.
The impression this car gives and the reality that it reveals are not the same. You look at it and you just think, that's the fastest car I've ever seen, because it looks like it. Doesn't it look like it should be? It's the timeless looks. It's that sketch in a math book that keeps this thing looking like the fastest car on the planet. It's not, but it's quite an adventure.